Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, the Titans' second preseason game of the year kicks off on Saturday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm breaking down everything you need to know as we head into that matchup. Number one, Malik Willis. How much will he play and what will factor in to how many reps he gets on Saturday? Then we'll talk Treylon Burks. Will he have a better performance in preseason game 2 than he did in preseason game 1? And finally, we'll talk about the Titans defense, focus on the cornerbacks who should have a dominant performance. I'm breaking down everything you need to know heading into the Titans' second preseason game of the year on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Titans fans, it is time for a game preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Excited to dive into it. Before we do, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Elias. Their app lets you access team and player stats, head-to-head team comparisons. Give yourself the edge this NFL season. Find Elias Game Plan in the App Store or on the Play Store today. Also, want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. If this is your first ever listen, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream. You are going to find the Locked On Titans podcast on all platforms, always free, all year round. So make sure that you check out the Locked On Titans podcast everywhere, including the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Subscribe there, smash the notification bell, and throw a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Right now, I'm trying to get this video to like 1 million likes. I think that's doable for us. Check me out on Twitter at TicTacTitans as well for my real-time analysis of the game and all of my film stuff here on the Locked On Titans podcast. It is your team every single day. So make sure you subscribe. But we're going to dive right in here to our game preview. And during the season, in the game previews, I focus on schematic things. I'm looking at outside zone versus the front of the defense. I'm looking at this particular coverage that the Titans like to play against this certain route combination. But during the preseason, it's all about individual analysis and looking at individual players and the roster battles going on within the Tennessee Titans team. So we're going to talk about Malik Willis first, then we'll transition to all of the interesting things on offense, including Treylon Burks, and then talk all the interesting things on defense, including the cornerbacks, Roger McCreary and Caleb Farley. But let's start with Malik Willis. And the real question for everybody is, how much will Malik play? And personally, I think if everything goes well, Malik will play 3 quarters in this game. The reality for me is I don't want Malik Willis out there in the fourth quarter with the lowest of the low on the depth chart for the Titans, where he's going to get battered, where the wide receivers aren't going to get open. He's not going to have time. He's going to have to run around and use his legs just to be able to operate, and that isn't really helping him with what he needs to improve on. So let's talk about improving. So number one, obviously, Malik has to throw the ball. Yes, we were all excited about Malik's performance last week against the Ravens because he made some highlight plays. He had the 48-yard bomb. He had the crazy arm angle on the throw to Tommy Hudson. He had the touchdown run where he reversed field. All flashes of what we wanted to see, but the reality was there were missed throws. There were times where Malik dropped his eyes and he left the pocket too early. His very last play, he had Treylon Burks wide open for a 60-yard touchdown on there was single high coverage by the Ravens. They were in a cover 3 look. The safety started fading over to the opposite side of Treylon Burks. He ran a fade route, a go route from the slot, and he was wide open down the field. I mean, they caught the Ravens with their pants down in a pressure, and it should have been an easy touchdown. Malik dropped his eyes too early, didn't let it rip, and that's a missed opportunity. And that's what prompted Mike Vrabel to pull him from the game immediately and say, Malik needs to throw the ball. We know that Malik Willis has the ability to run around and make plays. What we need to see is Malik Willis progress in terms of going through his progressions, reading the defense, knowing what route is going to be open, and letting it rip. So it can be both things. You can be excited about the flashes that you've seen from Malik while also knowing that it wasn't an incredible performance and that he has to get better. Well, that's what I'm going to be looking for in this game. Does Malik hang in the pocket and make throws? You have to throw the ball. Not only, and here's what I'm going to say. If Malik throws an interception or two, if Malik takes a few sacks because he's hanging in the pocket and trying to actually throw the ball, I'm fine with that. Look, if this is truly a red shirt year for Malik Willis, then who cares if he fails a little bit out there? Failure breeds success. You have to learn how to fail to learn how to succeed and learn from those failures. So I would rather see on certain plays Malik Willis actually take a sack in the pocket or throw an interception because he's trying to improve on what he's doing. No, you don't want to see bad plays and you don't want to encourage bad plays. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Malik staying in the pocket and throwing the ball and there being mistakes from that is better than him just bringing down the ball and running around like we already know that he can do. So I want to see Malik improve the throwing, but it's not just about Malik's development, guys. One of the problems that you run into when Malik is dropping his eyes and running so much is you're not getting a good look at your wide receivers. If wide receivers are getting open, they need the ball thrown to them to see if they can catch it, if they can make a play afterwards, and all of those things. You can't properly evaluate the wide receivers if Malik isn't throwing the ball when they're open. So it's not just about Malik's progress. It's about evaluating the wide receivers on your team currently. So I would say that if Malik doesn't go out there in the first 2 or 3 series and improve on what he's being asked to do and stay in the pocket and make throws, then he's only going to play a quarter and a half because Vrabel's going to get frustrated and say, hey, we're not getting a look at our wide receivers. And that's an important part of this game too. It's not just about Malik. So hopefully we see Malik improve on those aspects. All the coaches say he's a quick learner who seems to take what he's messed up and get better at. So hopefully we see improvements there from Malik, even though I'm not expecting perfection. But on the flip side of the coin, it's about evaluating the wide receivers as well. So it's important that if Malik isn't progressing in those areas quickly enough, that the Titans get Logan Woodside in there to make sure that they can at least take a look at this wide receiver group, which is in a tight battle. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Speaking of, so just to round that out, I'd like to see Malik Willis play 3 quarters and then have Logan Woodside come in for the 4th quarter, and he can take those body blows behind a terrible offensive line and go from there. So that's what I want to see. But as I said, the wide receiver battle is tight right now. And speaking of one of the wide receivers, Treylon Burks, he caught a lot of flack from the coaching staff throughout the week for his performance against the Ravens. How will he respond? We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about guys like Des Fitzpatrick, Mason Kinsey, Cody Hollister, Reggie Roberson, Terry Godwin, who are fighting for their roster spot right now. We'll talk about the rest of the offense as well. Before we get into all of that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at Dave. So let's all just be honest with each other for a moment. We've all been in a situation in our lives where we're a little tight on cash. Maybe you need a few gallons of gas in the tank. You got another wedding you have to go to and you need to buy a gift or something. Maybe you're just stressing out about certain bills that you don't have the cash on hand to pay. That's where Dave can help. Dave is a banking app that can help get you up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank. Buy that gift. Catch up on those bills. You can finally tackle the expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest. There's no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. That's right. Download the Dave app in the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Remember, future you will thank you. Titans fans, fans, we are going to continue this game preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. The Titans are taking on the Bucs on Saturday night at home. Excited for that game. Remember, I'm going to be going live immediately after the game to break down the performance on Saturday night, right after the game ends. I'm hitting the button. I'm going live to talk about the game and everything that took place on Sunday. I'll kind of have a more full recap, my additional thoughts after I've had a chance to kind of take it all in. And then, we're going to be going Monday through Friday all the way into next week. There's joint practices with the Cardinals, the final preseason game. Guys, football is almost here. And speaking of that, thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. However, if you do play fantasy football, you have to check out Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty. Starting on August the 22nd, we're going to be bringing you daily top 10 lists for fantasy draft week. That's Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. But we got to talk about the offensive side of the ball real quick before I do. Those watching on YouTube, you see it? You see it? You see the background? It's coming along. Got a few more pieces, got a few more touches that I'm going to be putting in before the season or right at the beginning of the season. But you guys spoke and I listened, classing up the background as I'm moving into the new house. So thank you guys all so much for your critiques, man. This isn't a monarchy. This isn't a dictatorship. I'll listen to you guys. All right. So there you go. I hope you guys are enjoying. I'm pretty happy with it. And there's still some more stuff that I'm pretty excited about to come. But looking at offense. So after Treylon Burks' performance against the Ravens, again, I mentioned the play with Malik Willis. He was wide open. So I was a little surprised when the coaching staff kind of took Treylon Burks to task. And they said some of the stuff that he was doing in practice just simply didn't translate to the game. And that's something that they're wanting to see from him. They're wanting to see the improvements he's making in practice actually show up in the game. And I guess they didn't see that last week. I thought Burks got open quite a bit, and they only really tried to get him the ball one time, and it was on the jet sweep where he got 4 yards. I think this needs to go both ways. Yes, Treylon needs to translate some of the things in practice into the game better. That's 100% right. But the Titans need to give him more opportunities and get the ball in his hands. Can't just be one jet sweep. Throw a quick screen to him. Throw a manufactured bomb to him. I mean, try to get him the ball more. Make it a point and see how he does then. So I'm saying this go both ways. Treylon needs to be a little bit better, but the Titans need to get him the ball a little bit more if they're going to be playing him in preseason games. I think that's fair. I'm expecting a little bit of a nudge from both people. So will Burks be able to do it? I hope so. My expectations, I'd like to see the guy get about 2 or 3 catches for about 30 yards, get him a run for about 5 or 6 yards. I want to see Treylon Burks get 5 touches in the game, 5 times, get the ball in his hands. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm thinking 30 to 40 total yards off that. That's what I want to see, okay? Let him play 2 series. Let's say 2 series out there for Treylon, and then get him out. So 2 series, 5 touches. They should be force feeding him the ball. That's how I feel. Let's see it, okay? But let's stay on wide receiver here because that's a big point of interest for me. We probably have the top 4 that we've expected all along. NWI, Robert Woods, the 2 rookies, Burks and Phillips, and now Racey McMath seems to have a chokehold on that 5th spot. I think the Titans should keep 6 wide receivers. I feel like the leader in the clubhouse right now is Dez Fitzpatrick, but call it confirmation bias. I just don't think the guy is worthy of a roster spot. So you got Dez, Mason Kinsey, Cody Hollister, Reggie Roberson, Terry Godwin. I got to tell you, I don't see Terry Godwin finding a spot. I'd like to see him on the practice squad, though. Reggie Roberson, maybe. But with Racey McMath giving that deep threat, it makes it tougher for Roberson to carve out a role. Hollister, look, guys, we know that Hollister is like a Dollar General Nick Westbrook-Akina, okay? He's big, 6'4", come out there, good blocking wide receiver, but he just doesn't have the juice, okay? I want to keep him on the practice squad as a backup option for NWI. I think their skill sets are, NWI is just a better player, more explosive athlete. So I want to keep Hollister on practice squad because I love what he brings to the table if he has to be called up in spot duty. But I'm really looking at Des Fitzpatrick versus Mason Kinsey. One, Des Fitzpatrick, better size, a draft pick that the Titans traded up for, still absolutely insane. One of the most insane, terrible decisions of the J-Rob era is what he did with Des Fitzpatrick. So they may want to try to keep Des on the roster just because it makes the draft pick look worse. But you don't double down on a mistake by continuing to live through the mistake. That's two mistakes, and two wrongs don't make a right in this scenario. I think Mason Kinsey should make the team. Des Fitzpatrick doesn't give you anything on special teams. He's not a returner. He's not going to be a good gunner. Mason Kinsey right now is listed as a backup on kickoff return and a backup on punt return. That's special teams value. And if you are going to heavily feature a guy like Kyle Phillips, you need somebody who can replicate that skill set in the event that Kyle Phillips goes down. There is nobody on the team right now that can replicate what Kyle Phillips does like Mason Kinsey. So the special teams value, being able to mimic Kyle Phillips, I think Mason Kinsey should be the number 6 wide receiver for the Titans. But I think ultimately it will be Des Fitzpatrick. But none of that's set in stone. And what happened, this is why when I talked about Malik Willis, I talked about evaluating the wide receivers. It's so important for the quarterback to be able to just do the bare minimum and get the ball out when guys are open so that they can evaluate these guys. This is a tight battle. I mean, Kinsey, Dez, Roberson, Hollister, I really think those guys are battling it out right now. And how they perform against, a lackluster backup cornerback group from the Buccaneers, I think that'll be very, very interesting. Do have to talk about the right tackle battle. With Christian DeLauro hurt and probably out of this game, NPF and Radens are going to get a great opportunity to play a ton of tackle. So, and they're going to have to. There's, I don't expect Lawan to play. Obviously, Nate Davis not practicing. He's not going to play. Ben Jones definitely isn't going to play. So, with Nate Davis out, Jamarco Jones probably not playing. We're going to see Aaron Brewer. We're going to see Xavier Newman, Jordan Roos, Dylan Radens, and NPF, and they're going to have to play a lot, probably the whole first half. So watch those guys on the offensive line. Where are the Titans getting good runs? Where is the pressure coming from in pass protection? Watch the tackles. I know that it's not the most exciting part of the game, but God, it's so important. Watch the tackles. I would expect NPF on the left, Radens on the right. Also, the interior offensive line, I just talked about that. Great opportunity for Corey Levin, Jordan Roos, Xavier Newman, Hayden Howerton. The interior offensive line guys are going to get a ton of opportunity in this game. Even a guy like Jalen McKenzie, Andrew Rupsich are going to get great opportunities as rookies in this game because of all the injuries the Titans have and the starters sitting out on the offensive line. I want to see a lot of Chikakonkwo. The Titans probably aren't going to play Austin Hooper. Maybe Jeff Swain plays, but he didn't play last time. And if not, that just leaves Chikakonkwo and Thomas Odukoye. So Chick is going to get a ton of work all game long. Excited to watch him. And then finally, with Trenton Cannon banged up throughout the week, with Jordan Wilkins gone, with Derrick Henry and Dontrell Hilliard not going to play because their roles are certified on the team, Haskins against Chestnut. I think there's a real chance here that Chestnut can find a way to beat out Haskins for that backup Derrick Henry running back spot. That is something that I'm going to be watching for. And guys, don't just look at running the ball. Look at catching the ball out of the backfield. Look at pass protection. Those things matter. So watch for those with the running back battle. But now I want to transition into the defensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about the cornerbacks. They should dominate in this game. We got to talk about the D-line, edge, linebacker, special teams, all that, breaking it all down for you guys. Before we get into it, do want to tell you guys about something that I think is a rather serious topic, and it's from our friends over at Better Health. So I'm working with Better Health right now. BetterHelp does a great job. And remember, that's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P. I've had a few meetings with a counselor, with a therapist. It's been incredibly productive. I know that whether you guys want to admit it or not, you've all had down times in your life, times where life's thrown you a curveball, and we all need help, guys. No man, no woman is an island. You can't do it all alone. I've been through a lot in my life, experienced a lot of traumas, and I want to be the best version of me for the people around me, for myself, for you guys. And I think that therapy truly is a good way to, people just have a negative connotation with therapy. Like it's a bad thing. Like only weird people need help with therapy. Guys, what really got me there was a lot of the people I listen to in the media, Colin Cowherd, Mike Greenberg, people like that have admitted that they do therapy themselves. And I always thought therapy was for people who, don't have good lives and have a lot of, it's just not the case. Some of the most successful people in the industries that you care about go to therapy just to be a better version of themselves. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, and it's available to people worldwide. It's really easy. You just log in, go through your experiences, go through what you're looking for, and they assign a therapist directly to you to fit your needs. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional therapists in all 50 states. So they have a special offer right now for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Titans fans, let's cap off this game preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down everything you need to know before the Titans take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home on Saturday night. We talked about Malik Willis and all the factors that go into how much he plays. We talked about the offense and all the interesting things to watch for there. Now I want to talk about defense and special teams. Before we get into it, I want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Now make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert Vinny Iyer on the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. He's going to bring you over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle that gives you moves that no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy drafts with Locked On Fantasy Football. And I'm officially announcing it now. The Locked On Titans Fantasy Football League will return this year. I'll have more details out to you guys next week, but I'm going to have 11 listeners in a fantasy league with me. The winner, the champion of the Fantasy Football League, will get to come on the show for an entire episode next offseason. Shout out to Kevin Chesventer, the annual winner. I did take a break last year as I transitioned onto YouTube. There was a lot going on, but I feel settled now in the process, and I'm excited to get back in a fantasy league with you guys. What I'm most likely going to do is I'm going to have you guys go to one of our advertisers, use a promo code that we've provided, send me your receipt showing me that you've used our Locked On promo codes at one of these advertisers, and that will get you free entry into the fantasy league. So be on the lookout next week. I'm going to be announcing the details on that and on Twitter, and I have a little bit of a giveaway. Titans book bag, Titans water bottles, some koozies and things. I'm going to be pumping out one of those during the bye week before the season begins after the third preseason game. So check me out on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Get subscribed and get ready for the Locked On Titans Fantasy Football League. But we got to move forward. I'm so excited, man. I'm so excited. We got to move forward here and talk about the defense. So the Titans starting cornerbacks, and I'm counting all three of them, Fulton, Farley, and McCreary, they need to ball out, okay? The Bucs won't have Chris Godwin. They won't have Mike Evans. Julio Jones probably won't play. I believe Tyler Johnson got hurt during the week of practice. I mean, the Buccaneers literally don't have any of their top four wide receivers. Russell Gage also not playing. Top 5? Maybe you want to put Scotty Miller at 5 and Tyler Johnson at 6. I don't know. Either way, 5 of the top 6 receivers for the Bucs aren't going to be available. Caleb Farley and Roger McCreary should dominate those matchups. That's what I'm looking for. They better, okay? Number 2, the defensive line. I'm talking about the interior D-line. The Bucs offensive line should have some of their starters out there. Wirfs, Donovan Smith, maybe Robert Hainsey, Aaron Stinney. I know they rotated in another guard with Aaron Stinney throughout the week as well because Stinney really struggled on Wednesday, but it was Jeff Simmons. I mean, come on. But Aaron Stinney, that's a former Titan who couldn't latch on. So kind of shocking that he's one of their starters, but they've been dealt a lot of injuries as well. So the Titans D-line should get a good look against Tampa Bay's near starting offensive line. Guys like Tierra Tart, Naquan Jones, Deshaun Hand, Laurel Murchison. Kevin Strong got banged up on Thursday. I don't know if he's going to be out there. Jaden Peavy. Sam Okweanonu. These guys have to find a way to have a good performance in this game because that's one of the positions I think is going to get cut down pretty heavily after this game. So that's a big matchup, and we should get some actual concrete evidence that we feel good about using against, what should be some of the starters from Tampa Bay. Now, outside of that, the guys I really want to focus on here are on the edge. Because like I said, Wirfs and Donovan Smith might get some reps in this game. That's the starting tackles for Tampa Bay. Rashad Weaver has been really popping during training camp and joint practices. Every day it feels like we're hearing about Rashad Weaver. Nothing major because it's trench play and all the skill positions always get more pop, but a lot of people have been talking about Rashad Weaver consistently making plays. Rashad Weaver and David Anini, the undrafted free agent out of Houston with great length, great burst, great speed, great agility. Can David Anini continue to make plays? He had 2 sacks and a strip last week. Can Anini and Rashad Weaver, and I would expect Anini to get higher reps this week. He didn't come in until real late, and he dominated. So I expect Anini to get reps maybe in the first half because the reality is one of the worst players in the game last week was Justin Lawler. With Weaver and Ola and Bud and Landry, there's one extra spot probably for an edge, and it should be David Anini. He can be the new Derek Roberson, a pure pass rush specialist who has to work on his run defense, who has to gain weight and gain strength. Justin Lawler is just not the guy. He's a practice squad player. I'd like to keep him on the practice squad, but I want to see David Anini have another good game. He's had some good practices. I want to see David Anini have another good game, and then I think it'll be undeniable, and the guy deserves a roster spot. So I'm watching for the edge rushers there. The linebackers have to be better in this game. We're probably not going to see David Long or Zach Cunningham. We know we're not getting Monty Rice, who's still on PUP. I'm worried about that, by the way, but that's conversation for a different day. So Chance Campbell, who everyone says had a pretty good week of practice. Jack Gibbons, Dr. Gibby, Justin Lawler, Joe Jones. These guys have to play better this week. They were bad last week, and that's why the Ravens were able to run the ball down their throat at the beginning of the game because the linebackers and Lawler they were running right at them and hemming them inside. So need to be better at linebacker this week. The new safety group, Lonnie Johnson, Tyree Gillespie, Adrian Colbert. Lonnie Johnson and Colbert both had interceptions this week. I'm not very high on Tyree Gillespie. I keep wanting to call him Tyree Gillespie, but maybe I'll be proven wrong there. I want to see how these new safeties do because it was obvious that John Robinson was not happy with what he was getting from the safeties, and he wanted some new blood in there. So let's see how they do. Special teams, kickoff return, McMath, Kinsey. Want to see how they do. Can Kinsey solidify himself as a backup kick returner to help him get a roster spot? Will Racey McMath strangle the kickoff return spot away from Dontrell Hilliard, who's really the starter right now? That's what I'm watching for. And then finally, the kicker-punter stuff. At punter, Ryan Stonehouse versus Brett Kern. How do they look? And then who's holding for Randy Bullock when or if he kicks field goals? Who's the holder? How do they do? Is it Stonehouse? Is it Kern? I think that battle's closer than people realize. So pay attention to that. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. Again, I'll be back with you guys on Saturday night immediately after the game, going live to break down everything we saw. And then next week, going to have 5 straight days of free Titans content here on the Locked On Titans podcast. So as I said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.